Freda, you have interviewed a lot of high-profile personalities. For example, Simon Sinek, Julian Assange, and the likes.
Yeah.
What would be your most profound experience in talking to these high-profile people?
Okay, so most profound. I think like all have their little quirks and everything. I was just, we were talking earlier on, right? He is not the most profound, but I did interview this guy formerly known as Prince Andrew. That was quite, you think, oh my God, I spoke to this guy, right? But profound, it's like, I always say, like, it's like picking who's your favorite child. I would say that, I mentioned this before, it was my interview with 𝗟𝗏𝗱𝗲𝗍𝗂. Right, so a lot of them also, for example, in the case of Simon Sinek, I interviewed online, so I couldn't see face to face. So 𝗟𝗏𝗱𝗍𝗂 actually came to the studio, and I don't know, there was something about him. The moment he started speaking, I just started tearing. Right, and it's the stories you've heard before, and it was just he had such a profound effect on me. And then after the interview, I switched off already. And then he just looked at me and we started talking for a bit. And then he just says, Freda, can I pray for you? And then that was just something that touched me, right? So to me, that was the most memorable. When you look at all the different people I've spoken to, it's just like you learn something from everyone. And that's because I have this thing about what can I learn from you, right? So that's my point of where I come in. I always try to find a point of connection and what I can learn from you. So everybody has had, definitely I've learned something from everyone, right? So but yeah, that was the most memorable. Right.
Any backstage kind of experience that you would like to share with the audience?
Backstage, do you know? Okay, people know my pet peeve is people arriving late. So I will not mention names. So some people arriving late, but that's more behind the scenes when, hello, the studio, like, it's 10 a.m. We're radio, right? Why are you not here? That kind of thing. So I think that's more, one or two people have done that lah, and then so then the interview doesn't get to be too good.
Yeah. How do you go through the entire preparation of getting there?
So the preparation is like, I would, the week, say next week, it's the weekend. I would start working on like, who am I interviewing next week? And this is like before ChatGPT, right? Okay, you actually have to formulate the intro, the questions like in the topics you want to cover, that kind of thing. And a lot of it is also conversational. You'll be asking me a couple of things and, hey, you said something, right? And then you'll go into that. So that's how you formulate. It'll be the weekend, but I enjoyed it. I loved it. I love going to work every Monday. I love every conversation. So when we first started with the radio station, so in that 4 hours, the first segment was about small, medium businesses. 11 o'clock was personal development. 12 o'clock was about tech. 1 o'clock was about organization development, right? So before then, I was the only one doing the interview. So every hour, the mind switches to a different thing. And I loved it, right? And the time just went by very quickly. And you're like, wow, when you come out, you're like, I'm so clever.
So this is with BFM?
This is BFM, yeah.
And you were there for about...
15 years.
Wow.
15 wonderful years, right?
Okay.
So there, I went there. It was such an urge for me to join. Again, I don't know if you know this because I used to work in IBM, right? And it was a 30% pay cut to join BFM, right? But it was very compelling at the time. There was no talk radio, right? And I didn't want to be in a music station but the talk radio on business, right? I said, wow, so exciting, so different and all that, right? So despite the reduction in pay, it's a risk I took, and nobody knew us, right? I mean, we just started out at that time. We'll have this conversation, can make money, can make money, So it's nice to be in a startup, right? And to see that growth and everything. So it was very, very memorable. Definitely one of those live, because it wasn't just about the radio, right, station that I did, but it opened doors for so many other things for me. Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain which part that's opened doors for you?
Open doors for me, but also self-initiative. I mean, during that period, right, I wrote a couple of books, as you know. I wrote a couple of books, but a lot of the books were actually based on my interviews with people, right? One of which was about, this is, I bought this book called Millionaire Women, something like that. And I was looking at it, I was like, what are the stats on women in business being millionaires? Numbers are very small. I was like, actually, what are the numbers in Malaysia? right? Then so I did the census, the only 20%, 21% of businesses are owned by women, right? I said from the 21%, how many of them are millionaires, right? So then I was like, okay, I would have interviewed a few of them, right? And then to me, it was like, what was the thinking? Not so much like what are the things that are stopping us, but why is it that their thinking is different for them to have $1 million revenues? So like those kind of things, like just open my mind, open my doors. Of course, you can get the information and do nothing about it. But I thought this is worthy of books, right? Covering not all Malaysian women, but women based in Malaysia, starting Malaysian businesses. So that's just one example of how it opened doors for me. Of course, then I do other things like moderating and hosting everything, right? So it broadened my scope beyond just the radio, but that's also because I want to, right? You can choose to just go interview, go home, and you can also do that. Nothing wrong, right? But that's not the way my mind works. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've learned when I was in consulting is to ask the right question.
Yeah.
I think same goes for even hosting shows in radio or even moderating panel sessions, right? How do you start asking the right question? What makes it a question, the right question?
Okay. I think one of the things is like, what's your angle first? Right? There's so many ways to skin a cat, right? So even coming in here, like, what's the angle? Where do we want to start from the angle? So do you want to start at the angle, right? And then from the angle, you start off from that particular angle. It could be about operational, whatever, right? Then from the angle, then you sort of filter down, but you also have I think that's where you want to go from, right? So then it's easy with the questions. Now got ChatGPT easy as well. But then even when you put things in ChatGPT, right, it's not just throw it all there, right? You go say, I want to skew it this way, right? So then that's the way. So you also set the direction of how you want the interview to sound. Yeah.
Right. So in the with your experience of handling or speaking to all these top leaders in the industry, whether domestic or international, you would have seen the various styles of people trying to communicate and articulate, right? Are there any specific categories of how people articulate? Are they those introverts will speak in this way or extroverts will speak in this way?
I think if they've been media trained, they're okay, right? But the things not to do, don't use jargon. Right? So don't use jargon. Even if I know, it doesn't mean the audience will know. You'll still have to explain what it means, right? Unless it's such common. Sometimes we get into our bubble, right? We start into our jargon conversation. So I think that's important not to do. Introvert, extrovert, if you've been media trained, you're good. We have to get better at storytelling. Right? So whether you're an introvert and extrovert, if you have the storytelling skills, right? And connecting something that's so dry into a story that everybody can relate to, that's fine. So if someone's an introvert, if they've been media trained, you can't tell, right? But otherwise, you'll know, so they're speaking softer, they're speaking slower, or, that kind of thing. So then the extrovert also sometimes talk too much, right? Reel them back in a bit. So, and then you don't want them to be too silly. Right? This is Sally, we've got the solution. So that fine line of, okay, let's not talk too much about that. Let's come back to, the story behind the business. Yeah.
About training them to be more media savvy.
Yeah.
Is it very difficult?
No, it's not. I don't think it's difficult, right? There are a couple of basic things, right? Whether you're on air, how do you dress, that kind of thing, right? But if it's just radio, how you sound, right? What's your voice like? What's your pitch like? What's your speed like? There's a time to be, fast. There's a time to be slow. There's a time to go high. There's a time to go inflections and time to pause.
Right.
So people can think, right? So these are things that can be trained, right? So it sounds very strange at first, but if you do it often enough, then it becomes part and parcel of who you are.
We see leaders going in and out of, say, conferences and launches and events, right? And sometimes planned, sometimes not planned. There's media presence and they're pulled to a corner and say, okay, can you talk about this, right? Some of them are very, very natural, off the cuff. They can just speak, right? Some of them may not be ready. So people like that, I mean, this is for the audience.
Right.
Where to start? Okay, do they engage someone to train them in media, or do they go somewhere, a place? Or?
Okay, so people do. I also help some people with media training, right? So the thing is, like, they call it the door stopper. Suddenly you get stopped, right? They won't ask any questions during a press conference where it's controlled when you're stopped, right? So if you've got a good PR person, the person should take you away. But there are a couple of things you should be ready, right? I mean, there are a couple, the techniques like bridging techniques or like where you bridge back to what your topic is about. So people tend to take you aside and try to go off tangent on something. So you got to be wary of coming back to your topic. So that if you're going to get someone out that can speak to the media, that person has to be trained on all these aspects where you can be stopped somewhere. What do you say when someone asks you that, right? So the FAQs have to be in place, right? And then there's a time like, okay, I'm not able to talk about this anymore. Anyway, my PR person is here. If you have any further questions, you should be able to answer a couple of these questions. So when you're ready to put your spokesperson out there, that person should have been trained. Yeah, should have.
Okay.
Maybe not all the time, but should have, right?
Was there any case in your experience handling guests in your shows,
Right,
where they seem to be prepared, but they were not able to articulate?
Okay, my thing is I always try to get my guests to be comfortable, right? I try to get my guests to be comfortable. Why? When they're comfortable, then they can talk, right? So sometimes then they get into, if they get into like a script or they've got a couple of pointers and they get too jargony, then my interview becomes very short. Right? If you can't, like if you can give me another story, then I'm more intrigued to hear, right? But if you're just going to tell me a couple of things that have been prepared, then it's like, okay, I will let you say what you have to say. But then whether I'm engaged, if I'm not engaged, the audience isn't engaged, right? Mm.
So also building their own identity, right?
Yeah.
Not only from a personality point of view, but how they communicate. I mean, some of us, sometimes we pause too much, and etc. But it kind of relates back to the personality.
Okay.
Yeah. In what instance this is not an, how should I say this? It's not an outlier out there that you can pick up and say, okay, this is how you should do it.
Right.
But it becomes like more like a staple for everybody, that everyone should be trained in speaking like this, right?
Okay, I think you need to have your own style. Right? You definitely need to have your own style. And some people, you look at I always find that being simple and getting a message across and simple storytelling. I always go back to this. Everybody, okay, maybe the young ones don't remember, but 1,000 songs in your pocket. Right? And Steve Jobs originally he's a bit of an introvert, right? He's been training and all that, but his messaging is so simple. We all got 1,000 songs in the pocket. Now we have more than 1,000 songs. But back then, like, wow, what does that mean? Everybody understood it, right? What do you mean I could have 1,000 songs in my pocket? But so these are things that you can train, right? And it's not personality based. I think you should always be yourself. If you're, you can still, there are a couple of people who are not naturally extroverts, but they have something. You've seen world leaders who are able to, in their quiet demeanor, still get their message across. They don't have to be loud, unlike some. Names will not be mentioned. Okay.
Yeah. In current work that you're putting your time on, say, between communication, and I also know that you're also talking about sustainability, right? How do you split your time, and what is sustainability now?
Okay. So this is a topic that will be here forever, right? Despite whatever you say. Now, how I got into this whole idea of sustainability and why I find it so interesting is that it is for companies to be more responsible at the end of the day, right? So when I first started at BFM, I started interviewing social enterprises. So what I like about social enterprises is that you are making money, but you're making money to do something that is purposely good, right? Whether it's to help girls who don't have education, people to be able to earn a living, right? So all these all these elements. So then after the SDG goal came about in 2015, right? And I was saying, oh wow, all these elements come into play with what social enterprises are trying to do. And then of course, now with companies are talking about, why did ESG come about? Because there was no governance. They were not caring about the environment. They were not caring about their staff, right? So these things came about. So so when you are consciously thinking about it and putting into practice, it is good for the company, it is good for the world. Of course, we get to the point where sometimes, are we just ticking boxes? So I mean, that's a dilemma everybody has with. But if you don't put a benchmark to things, nobody will think about it in the first place. You know, for example, I'm very involved in the 30% club, right? 30% club is trying to get women on boards, right? if we didn't even put the number there, it would be like nobody even, it's not a quota, but the fact that you're thinking 30% right now, it makes a difference, right? So in the last 10 years, a 30% club have been around from 19% to 31%. And it's become conscious that, hey, we need women on board. So it's like that, right? Having the reason I did the show is like, and I want to simplify it, not make it complicated, because it can be very complicated, right? But what are you doing? Why are you doing it, right? So you hear from different companies, big and small, the things they're doing. And I want it to be just like knowledge sharing again. And something that I am passionate about. Yeah.
Right. So in that sense now, moving to a more strategic conversation, like at board level, right?
Yeah.
Are they taking this because it's made known is 30% and you got to maintain that, or are they really, really willing to take on women because they find them really skillful? Or
okay,
because there are some risks, may not be very transparent.
Right. I bring my sister in, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Of course, you still want to hire the best, right? You still want to hire the best. But then think about it, right? Traditionally, most businesses run by traditionally. That's just how it is. Women came to a workforce later. So immediately your first good thing is, I'll bring my friend, right? A qualified friend, but you'll bring your friend, right? But you never thought of women until this has come about. So now you consciously, of course, you want to hire the best. It's so funny, right? Before the 30% club, nobody made deal about what the qualifications are. Until we had the 30% club, suddenly the qualifications are so important. You had Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? Nobody talked about anything. The moment this came about, is a women qualified? I don't know why we're asking these questions. Doesn't matter. That means everybody has to be qualified, right? So the standards are more stringent for both genders, right? So it is important. It's not a quota, like I said. It's about bringing the numbers and having it recall. If you don't talk about it, you don't realize it. And the reason why 30% came about, if you want to know the history, was that the person who started the 30% club in the UK was that in a room of 10 people, if you have one person, and it could be gender, it could be race, it could be whatever, it's like, that 1%. Somehow when it's 30%, regardless of whatever the criteria is, it changes the dynamics. Of course, we want 50-50, right? We want 50-50, but at least you have a 30%, the dynamics in that room change. Yeah.
Right.
Research has shown.
Right.
Don't ask me where it was in the book. I have to find a book, but it was research-based.
So how is the women community taking this? Are they really upbeat about this?
Oh, yes.
More demand than supply?
Yes. So now you see like a boards going like, must be female, right? Must be. So, because they're trying to meet the criteria. But it's fine, right? I mean, you've got to start this way. Of course, we want to say 50%. So it's more conscious now, right? Because it's not law yet, but you have to report it, right? So it's more conscious now. And of course, you're going to bring bring qualified and right people into that role. But yeah, I think it's moving in the right direction.
So what's next?
For who?
So you've said some parts we are about 31%
yes,
now, right?
Yes.
So
I think, right? So with the 31%, it's still the top 100 PLCs.
Right.
So it's not all the PLCs yet because it's not law. Right? So top 100 PLCs, we've reached that. So now we're hoping that all PLCs, even with the top, because it's not law, not all of them have complied, right? Or are moving in that direction. So, yeah.
Yeah. And what's your role? What do you do? I mean, how do you get people on board, and how do you, like you said, you must get the board to be conscious about this, right? So what steps do you take? Okay,
so I'm a volunteer. So everybody in the 30% club is a volunteer. So I volunteer wherever I can. If there are events like, Freda, can you do this, right? But I think more people talking about it. There are different roles that different people in. I'm not in a. I support. There are some people who are doing different roles, whether it's getting corporates to come on the bandwagon in this conversation. I have the interest to get more Sarawak women on board. So that is something that I'm trying to do and trying to get some breakthrough there. A bit challenging at the moment, but that is the idea, because in that is also a case of diversity, right? We don't want also just women on board, but they're also in one particular area. So there are a lot of qualified women throughout the country, but I have a personal stake in Sarawak, right? So as a Sarawakian. But yes, we want more representation, not just in the Klang Valley, but ultimately in all these different places. I think I can't remember whether there's 20 or 40 PLCs in Sarawak itself. Maybe try to change that first, and then hopefully, we can move that.
Right. Coming back to conversations and communication, right? What would we say about leaders putting in the right amount of effort in knowing what to communicate out there, whether it's public space or whether at organization space, because they are so busy day to day, right? They are stressed with work. There's pressure from the board, from the shareholders, etc.
Yeah.
But they have to be very mindful of what they say and how they say it, right? So at what point do they need to pause themselves? In a day, you work not 8 hours, you work probably about 12, 15 hours, right? So how does one leader, I'm just thinking on behalf of our listeners out there, right? So where do I think about all these things?
All right. If you're a big company, you got your comms team, right? If you're a big company. If you're a small company, I mean, you have to start the conversation about what your company is. Maybe you can't do this every day, but I need to know who you are. People buy not a product, people buy into the brand, right? People buy into the story behind the brand. So you need to be out there, because if you don't create the story behind your brand, someone else will. Someone will make up something. Now if you don't start creating the content and you start typing on ChatGPT, they're getting content from elsewhere. So you've got to create the content, right? And create that your story. So it's not a case of I don't have time, but maybe you don't have the time to do it every day, but you have to consciously think about what you stand for, what your company represent, right? So you have to do that. Sorry.
There's no other way.
There's no other way. I mean, you cannot do that, but then who's controlling your narrative, right? If it's good life, you got a big company, then your comms team will do everything for you.
Exactly. But I think there's a struggle here because as you're growing to become the big company, you need to communicate a lot of things. Right?
Yes.
And if you don't have a very strong comms background, I mean, there are a lot of companies out there. They are well-deserved recognition in terms of the best innovation product, etc., etc. But then they sometimes hit a threshold,
right,
for growth,
right,
and more often than not, it's a bit subtle, but the communication part doesn't come off very obvious in terms of what's the purpose of the organization, like you said, even sustainability goals, right? So it doesn't appear very strong, especially in the non-PLC type of environment, right? So I think there's definitely an area for them to work on. Yeah,
and people also appreciate honesty right now and authenticity. I think when I don't know, I don't know, but I remember Howard Schultz from Starbucks left. And then after that, and then he came back again, right? So, but even if you make mistakes, right, people connect to what I've done and where we're going right now, right? When I can connect with you, I understand you better. I know your story better. I mean, of course, there's something, unless it's something, you're not doing something honest, and it's very difficult to disclose, right? But if you're being honest about things, and also just maybe not go so in depth with it, but then I think be honest about it. People, we love the Patagonia story. We love all these things, right? They choose to delist, so these are things, and you communicate. I always say, who controls the narrative? Someone else, or do you? Right? So I mean, just be conscious of that. Who is controlling your narrative? Someone telling a story about you, or are you telling your story? So
leaders have to be very conscious about this and think through very deeply about what's the story that they have, right?
Yeah.
Whether they sell a brand, whether they sell a story, or whether they sell a service or product. Right. So this is where I think the conversation gets into our leaders today. With ChatGPT now, we've seen some leaders today coming out on rostrums and reading content like for sure it's coming out from ChatGPT type of or AI type of content, content creation. Are we moving into an era where everything is like AI-fied, or is there a lot of genuine content coming out?
So you can read between. I think we're smart enough to read between the lines. Maybe as time goes by, right? So one of the things that I actually also was teaching some students out in India, and I was like, write an essay about your experience here. I said, you're all going to be using ChatGPT, right? I know that, right? But if I don't see anything personal in that story, right, then I know it's completely from ChatGPT because there was no personal element to it. So when you write these things, there's got to be, if it's just like, it sounds good, but there's no personality to it. There is no, and you'll be able to do that, right? So sometimes you read and say, okay, no, actually, I've got a personal story to tell, right? So it's just something like that. So aided together, right? So that is the future. We're going to be using ChatGPT, but how you put a personal element. So we are of that generation where we have personal stories. So my worry is also the younger generation just cut and paste something from ChatGPT without anything in depth. So that's a problem now, moving down the road as well. If I don't know who you are,
So how do we navigate this?
how do we navigate this? I think you can smell through it. I am able to see something that's completely ChatGPT,
right.
And I can see something that's, there's a personal touch. When I do the way I prompt is because of experience as well. The questions I ask and everything is because I come from experience, right? So people can use all this AI as a starting point, as a frame, but you've got to still roll up your sleeves and do it so that it gives you more depth. I feel. I don't know what's going to happen in a couple of years. It's going to get smarter and smarter. I don't know, right? But still, I feel that authenticity in a world where everybody's on the phone and everything, right? The connection is going to be very important. The human element is going to be more important. Otherwise, people are going to be isolated. That's why we always talk about having a community. Right? Because it's beyond social media. Like people still love to meet. All right, and still connect in that way. Yeah.
The competition today is extremely stiff, with more innovation coming out in the market and technology advancement, etc. On one end, the market is growing.
Yeah.
On the other end, the market is shrinking for some because they are not adapting to the next future, right?
Yeah.
So where would sustainability come in? To look at what's future like going to be.
We always talk about the VUCA world as well, right?
Yeah.
I think all the more so is important, right? All the more so, I always feel that you can only do so much that you can control, right? There's so much, who knew this year we'll have a shortage in oil getting to us, right? And that kind of thing. So all the more, I think it's a good thing. The pandemic showed us that, food security is a big concern here. Despite us being a very rich country with resources, we can grow our own vegetables, but not enough. We've worked out that supply chain was an issue, right? So we worked out all these kind of things that were issues in the so that brought it out to the fore. So I think this is sustainability. This is a whole thing. It makes us more aware. Then you are more aware that you need more things in place, right? Whether it's supply chain, whether it's how we live, whether how we think. I think this will actually help us, right? It's become more important because sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, we hear this a lot about sustainability, but there are also certain things that I observe. You see, when we do open burning, it's a big issue.
Yeah,
but it's only a little lump of dried leaves, for example.
Right.
But today, if you look at the war that's happening now, Iran war, the devastation is huge.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of bombings happening, etc. But we don't hear sustainability as being a topic today when things are happening like this.
Right.
So why? Where are the advocates?
Right. I know they're talking about the impact, right?
Yeah.
The impact to livelihoods, the impact to everybody. They are talking about it, but how do you? I don't know. I don't know how you manage that, right? I mean, we are more aware, like I said again, our dependency on certain places of business. So you look at alternatives. I think the Canadian president looked at alternatives, right? They were very conscious about now looking at alternatives. So to me, that's about sustainability as well. I cannot be dependent on this one place, right? I've got to look at other things. I think it makes people wake up. How do I then strengthen my supply chain so I'm not just dependent on one? If anything, if this is not, like we heard with the oil, some countries are in emergency, in the Philippines and all that. So they went into a state of emergency. So that would be an opportunity to look at how sustainable we are, if you get it right. So I mean, it is a sustainability thing. When you get into, when you don't have this thing. So what are we thinking in terms of reserves? What are we thinking in terms of backup? So that is a wake up lah.
Yeah. And also this term greenwashing. It's a very prominent area of discussion.
Yeah.
If you look at even fast food restaurants, we don't use plastic straws. But the entire furniture is made of plastic.
Okay.
So what sustainability are we saying and not doing?
Right. Okay.
And
but
why?
Good, but the plastic chairs will last it forever, right? So they were using it. So there's not. I think also we have to be very wary about not just plastic, right? Because plastic has its uses, and there are different kinds of plastic. It's the use of single-use plastic that's the problem, right? But plastic as a whole is still okay. You will also know what is being reported, what's not being reported, and then people are watching. I think more importantly, people are watching right now. Your conscience, your company, you have to be is your company conscious about it or have a conscience about it? Yeah.
So how big is greenwashing today is happening?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, it happens, and you want to go deep into it. I think the thing is so there are companies that you follow. There are seven companies I follow. They say this is our goal. Right. So you look at the reporting.
Right.
I think that's very important. You look at reporting. Okay. This is our goal. Where are we now? We have not achieved this. Why have we not achieved this? Right. I think that people want that. Right. Even this is our goal. We may or may not achieve our goal. But let me give you a year-to-year report. 2030, want to do this. 2026, okay, we achieved this. We couldn't achieve this. Right. But now we know that we cannot achieve this because we've got to change this. Right? So when you look at certain companies like that, okay, fine, you are doing something. So that's when you look into reporting a bit more clearly. So there come some companies, which I mean, that I was looking at recently was the Hilton, right? The Hilton, and they have their Hilton reporting. And I was like, okay, fine. So dig deeper, right? But if it's reported out there, then you know at least they've put it out there. So you put it out there, you're not doing it.
So you're committed to it.
You're committed to it, right?
You're serious about it, right?
Or you're putting out there and you're not doing it at all. Okay, right? So
what about the mid-sized companies? How do they navigate this? Because it's a huge undertaking, I suppose.
Yes, it is.
Right?
It is.
It's a big commitment.
Yes. I think Alliance Bank did a report, because you have to look at it sector by sector as well, right? So there's manufacturing, there's all these different sectors. So they are, and the government is actually doing a lot of things, right? There's funding, there is, aid and everything. So we're moving in that direction. And it is when I've also seen companies using sustainability as an innovation, right? As an opportunity to make more money and innovative, right? There's one company, it's PKT Logistics, and it's a big company, but it is still not a listed company. But they're doing a lot of things around sustainability, from the largest solar panel in their warehousing. I don't know how many companies do that. So there are ways of doing it. So I think you do it bit by bit again, because it is good for the environment. It is good for even employees right now. They are demanding these things, right? They are demanding that, hey, what are you responsible? You want to attract talent? This is an important thing right now.
And perhaps we should start at a very young age, right, for the next generation to come.
Yeah.
Are there any efforts along these lines?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have written about 7 books already. Yeah, and it's even the title is so attractive. And I saw one of them says "Life's a Stage." Talk us a bit about what's that book about.
Okay, that's the most personal one. That was and it's very personal. Wrote it in 2020 when we had nowhere to go and not many things to do. And the reason I wrote that book was also the year. It was a milestone year, and I thought, if I don't live, my son knows nothing about me. Right? So I know he doesn't read, hasn't read it, but should it be, right? So I wrote it with that in mind of the lessons that I learned in the milestone decades that I've been around, from my where I was born, where I had to live the country and all these things, right? So and how every decade, good or bad, taught me something, right? About resilience, all that. If I were to talk about what was a big the first major thing for me was when I had to leave the country, right? I had to leave. I was born in Brunei, and then my father retired. Not really retired. He had 3 more years for retirement, but his contract didn't get renewed. And when his contract didn't get renewed, that meant that we had to go back, right? But my life was disrupted, because I thought I could finish my 5th form and I couldn't. And then to me, this is a country I was born in. This is my education, my friends, everything. And 14, this is your best friend. It's the end of the world, a teenage girl, right? But it taught me that as much as you love your company, as much as you love the company is taking care of you, you got to take care of yourself, right? To me, it's about, you can't be so dedicated to company. Do your part, but you got to take care and make sure that you have other sources. So I think because of that, I've always been like, okay, I can't just be doing one thing, right? I cannot just be skilled in one thing. I've got to be skilled in many things, right? So I think that was one of and at 14, I think that was one thing that really shook me to my core. It really affected my life. And of course, in hindsight right now, I'm so glad it happened, but not when you're 14, right? So this was one of the lessons. And of course, over the years, my dad passing, there were different things that you learned as well over the decade. And how do you, this is a bit of story and what do you learn from that, right? So I think everything good and bad is the lesson to be learned and how to behave. So, yeah.
So if there are potential readers out there, which chapter would you think that's?
I can't remember.
You can't remember chapters?
I can't remember which chapter. The first 10 years of my life was pretty easygoing, right? I mean, it's pretty easygoing. Dad had a great job, and we're living happily in working for an oil company there, living happily and all that. Which chapter? I think the most pivotal will probably be in my teenage years, and the other one will probably be in my 40s. Right, those were I'm about to get hold of this book by Jim Collins called What to Make of Life. I could have gotten the title wrong, but I said we go through cliffs. Those are the 2 cliffs, right? The cliffs was leaving the country, forced to leave the country, and the other cliff was the end of my marriage, right? So those were the cliffs. Then you go through a fog, and then you come out of it, right? So that I think were the most pivotal moments. That also in terms of the breakdown of the marriage, that impacted my son, right? That kind of thing. So, yeah.
So the other book is, would you like to touch on this, is how Dad...
okay. We're 5 women got together,
exactly.
Which was very interesting, very muhiba. We got all the races writing their book. It was just about being audacious, right? Being audacious in what we do. And it's not a rude word, but you've got to be brave and audacious. So that process took, I think about 6 months or a year. And we were saying, okay, everybody, all right, 2,000 words, we got to meet the numbers. So who is a taskmaster, make sure you meet the deadline. So I like that. I think what audacity meant to us, right, in our space. So, of course, one is a trainer, and then, of course, Norlida is in HR, and there's me, and then so different kinds of people, different perspectives. So they share their story, right? So we decided the chapters, yeah.
So what's this 7 books shaped how you are today? As in, I mean, writing a book itself, one book itself, it's already a tall order. But you've done 7. What does that mean to you?
I think, okay, what it meant to me is that it is possible. Everybody's got a book in them, right? Everybody's got a book in them. If it's made an impact to one person, it's made a difference. When people say, the first book is like, okay, wow, that's the most scary, right? Then the second book, then people say, it's a joke. You write 7 books and say, so it's not a joke. Yeah, that's what it means to me.
Given that we are in a cusp of moving to a very artificial intelligence world. And from there, I mean, there's talks about getting into artificial general intelligence, etc. Right? These are the terms used by experts in AI and stuff, right? How do you think this kind of technology kind of impact the work that you are doing today?
Right.
and moving forward?
Okay. I think if we've been in that tech space, we've seen things happening like there's always a new buzzword and everything. But AI is quite different, right? It's quite different. It's impacting everybody. But we also hear when some new technology comes out, something's going to happen with jobs are going to be lost, right? Even Meta and Microsoft just announced that they're going to be letting go of some people. Now, when you look at what's going on, a few years ago, I did a course in design thinking, and when one of the very a professor in one of the universities, Professor Vijaya, he talks about the 3-box solution, right? And the first box solution is your current box is, yeah, this is what is good. You're managing it well and everything. Then after the second box is selectively forget your past. So whatever you think you're good at, don't think you're so good, right? You've got to change. You've got to evolve. When you think, then after that, create your future, right? So you consciously create your future on what you want to do next. And I think that's something that I've always sort of like look at that, right? You cannot just be radio and think that radio is going to be it, right? The world has come out with podcasts. The world has changed, right? So are you also moving with the times? But one thing, when I notice, I feel what's going to happen, I look at our kids, born with a phone in there, right? So what's going to be missing? Human connection. Right? Loneliness, right? Loneliness, isolation, the need for community. You will see that these things are going to be important. So how then do I try to be that gap, bridge that gap? Because AI is going to be AI, right? But humanly, you will still need those things. So I'm not too worried about it. You also go and change with the times, right? You also try to adopt these technology for yourself, but not forgetting that these are going to be important. These things are going to be important, right? I think there's going to be mental health. It's going to be a big thing, right? Because their point of reference is, everybody is looking at comparing, right? So when I was growing up, it was magazines, female magazines, right? Which you can choose to look at or not look at. This is constantly being bombarded at you, right? So I think that there will be a shift towards the connection, the human connection. Yeah.
Are there any works that you are working on that space in your area of work at the moment?
Not really, but I think what I always do is I always get asked to, like with women, right? What do you do then with women who are going through transitions in their life? So I do a lot of these talks or conversations. So I do a lot of that. Also, the 30% Club, that kind of thing. So more in that space. Yeah.
You spoke about confidence in some spaces. And what's it about? I mean, it's obvious to have confidence.
Right.
But when you speak about confidence,
right.
What do you speak to them?
About confidence?
Yeah.
I think let me just put it from the woman's perspective, right? The woman's perspective of how we have been, it's been ingrained, right? And it's not a Malaysian challenge. It is a global challenge, right? It is a global challenge. We are definitely the tall poppy syndrome, where you better not stand out. In school, this is I read this book by Tara Moore. She was saying that what happens is that when we're in school, who does the homework the best? Usually the girls, The girls will do the homework, and then they get A+ effort, right? You get that rewarded. In the workplace, you don't get recognized for that, right? If you don't speak up and say, this is what I've done, this is my achievements and everything. So we're hoping that we get recognized, right? It's not school anymore. If you don't speak up for what you've done, that's one thing. So and then women also, before they start anything, I need to get qualified. I better get this certificate before I get this certificate, before I apply for that job. So we know that statistically that's what they're doing. So when you're consciously aware of these things and know, like, actually I'm very capable as the next person, as the next man, right? I think this is what, when I say confidence, are you aware of your own unconscious bias, right? For example, and even other people's unconscious bias, your own unconscious bias. I give another example of, say, two people were discussing about the promotion of this woman, right? And it could be one man and one woman senior manager say, oh, but so-and-so just gave birth. I don't think she'll be interested. Your own unconscious bias has already stopped that person with the best intentions, right? But you think she's given birth so she doesn't want to travel. But it's your own unconscious bias not giving this person this opportunity, right? You haven't even asked this person whether you're interested. So these are things like to be aware of your own unconscious bias. Yeah.
You have moved from being a very well-known radio host to very well-known moderator, international MC, won awards, right? Now you are championing women in corporate sustainability, and there's a long list of things.
Right.
At the end of the day, who is Freda Liu?
She is all of the above. But okay, I think we also go to really life stages, right? At this point in my life, I'm also what's encoded in me, I would say, is communication, right? Which is a very natural thing for me, right? And you realize that when you were growing up, or teachers highlighted when growing up, that's very encoded in me. I have new things that I want to do as I get older. I want to see what more I can do for Sarawak as a Sarawakian. I've been away for so long. It's something that's very passionate for me. And I'm like, I want to go back to my roots and see what I can do there. There's still a book that's been on my mind for 2 years. I've done nothing towards it. So there are many, many things I would do. And I think that if you don't have growth or purpose or whatever, then when you don't have vision, you will perish, right? So there are a couple of things that I want to do. But who is Freda Liu? If I were to say that, I would say that I am resourceful. Okay, I am resourceful. I am. Am I a good mother? You have to ask my son about that, right? But then I always say, there's one thing I wrote about my dad, right? When my dad, when he was a very talented musician. He was a very talented musician. So you can imagine in the 40s or 50s, I had one uncle from Sarawak who took a boat to New York and was in a band. My uncle is also, can you imagine that, right? Back then, right? So my dad is very talented. He can play by ear the trumpet, the keyboard, right? But he did what was right, got a good job. Settled, raised the kids and everything. He died at 59, right? He died at 59 after hearing that he got ill the moment he heard me, the youngest, that, hey, Pa, I graduated. And it felt okay, my role is finished, right? So I don't want to die with the music still in me. You know what I mean? Have I played every note?
Right.
Have I played every note? Have I tried everything? And the thing is with design thinking it's a prototype. Like if I do something, it doesn't work, try something, you improve it, or this is not what we're going to work on, right? So that was that thinking, right? It's a prototype. So if we look at things like, okay, I'm going to try this, it didn't work. Okay, that prototype didn't work. So that kind of design thinking, right, is important. But I also don't want to die with the music in me. There's so many things I want to explore, so many different things I want to try. So don't know yet.
So then what is retirement age then?
Never.
I was just talking to somebody just recently. So this person has an idea of retiring at the age of 55. It's a choice. It's a choice. Yeah.
The money, sure.
Yeah, it's a choice, right? But I somehow feel the person is very capable of doing many, many things, right? But some people are sure that I want to retire at this age.
Right.
Some people are not sure. Like in your case, you are sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You will go on as long as the music goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
When it's time to stop, then it's time to stop, right?
Yeah.
So for people who are unsure, what do we tell them?
For people who are unsure, I would say what interests you as a child? Right? What interests you as a child? Don't go with the objective. A lot of things I do, I never think of money, but it interested me. Whether it's about giving back, right? Whether the universities ask me to come and moderate sessions for them, everything. This is what I do to give back, right? Because I feel that is not everything's about money. This is a skill that I have, and I can help university students or children, right? So maybe it's about that, right? So maybe if you find, you've got to find your purpose, right? And the purpose may change, and that's fine. But if you don't, so like I'm going back to my dad, right? I think his purpose was over the moment he knew I graduated, right? So he just sort of like, okay, life is over. It was a little bit of that, right? Of course, his health was not great, but a little bit of that. So if you don't find a purpose or something else, right? Help. There's so many causes you can help that your skills will come into, come in very handy, right? So when someone say I'm retired, I hope it's not just like playing golf. I mean, by all means, go and play your golf and travel and do that. But there is something that you can do to give back. I say this because I'm older. You asked me 10 years ago, who cares about the community, right? I mean, here's the thing. You really, can you allocate one day in a week to doing something, to helping something, to, there's so many things. There's so places where it's not about money, but people need your skills, people need your time. So there are many things to do. So don't just,
Yeah. So I noticed that you mentioned about your dad a few times.
Yeah.
So I kind of have a feeling that he is your hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't make me cry. Okay. All right.
Okay. Promise you I won't make you cry.
I'll try. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Besides your dad, who else are the heroes in your life and your career?
Okay. No. Okay. I look at aspirational people, right? So when you say heroes, aspirational people would be when I look at Oprah Winfrey, right? She's 70s doing her own thing. She went through a fog herself as well after being so successful. What do I do now, right? She's at the pinnacle. So I look at Oprah Winfrey, 70s. Oh, she's interested in what she's doing. The other person I always talk about is Arianna Huffington, who started the Huffington Post at 55. Okay, sold it in her mid-60s for a couple of $100 million. And no, she didn't want to retire. She started Thrive, which is about sleep and that kind of thing. And just about maybe 2 years ago, Thrive AI, right? So she's gone into the space. She's in her mid-70s, like, right? So you find, and it's not about money for them anymore, but there is a new purpose, a new vigor. So I look at them as role models. And then, of course, Arianna Huffington was a writer. And then, of course, with the Huffington Post, in that journalism background. So I can really connect with these women and say, and they're still at it, right? Evolving, and they're still communicators, but evolving, right? So it's like, wow. So look at Jennifer Lopez also too, she's also a role model. If she can do it, I can do it too.
What are the work that you're doing currently now?
So, okay, the work that I'm doing currently, like I said, a bit of the Shift Asia continues. And the reality is that for it to be sustainable, I will need sponsors. So I don't know if this will continue, but I will do it in other ways, see how I can collaborate with other people. One thing, there's still something very passionate to me. I'm very involved with the moderating in corporate events. I'm very passionate about that. I've been asked to do a bit of training around executive presence and coaching in that space. So I'll talk a little bit about the book. That's not happened yet, right? But the story behind the book is that it's two, maybe it's manifold. There's so many tribes in Sarawak, in Borneo, on the island of Borneo. They actually understand sustainability. Right? They understand sustainability from different parts, whether it's from the highlands or lowlands. So there are different aspects of sustainability. The highland rice farmers in, not Lun Bawang, but in that area, long, I can't remember where, in the language, there's no such word as pesticide. Right? There's no such word as pesticide. It's a new thing because they say there's enough for nature, there's enough for me. Right? Mm-hmm. And so anyway, that's just one aspect. That's just one tribe, right? But what the different tribes can teach us. So that's what I wanted to, and even the whole coming of age in the Iban language is berjalai to berjalan, right? And you're going on that journey of growth. So that's something I want to explore a bit more. We always refer to the Western principles and, like the Japanese have their ikigai and everything else. What's coming up from this part of the world? So it's like, there's so much wisdom from the jungles of Borneo that we are not touching on yet. Still uncovered, right? We haven't taken time. We take it for granted, right? So that's a project that I have been talking about and you know what? There's so much you can do. You can turn that into lessons. You can do into a retreat. Stop going to the other Bali, come to Borneo. Like there's so many elements of it, right? And so, yeah, that's been ruminating in my head for the last couple of years.
Interesting.
Yeah. But there's so much we can learn, right? We don't know. This is my family history on my dad's side has been there since the 1700s, right? That's the family history. But so little I know of it, right? Yeah.
So it's like them saying, we can live with it and we can live together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, but how do they, so it's such the lifestyle, and we don't want to lose it, right? If the tribes go also, right, and we don't pass this wisdom, because it's always been oral. So I don't know if it's been written down, not just one tribe, but the little tribes, right? There's so many different tribes. So yeah, that's the project I've been talking about. If someone would like to collaborate, get in touch.
So for the younger generation of leaders, or leaders to be, what would be your words to them?
Leaders to be. Don't stop learning, right? And never stop learning. Don't think you know it all, right? Because you never know it all. My reader, maybe not just your too long didn't read. I mean, really, really read. I still go back to my book, because then there's no interruption, there's no notification, that kind of thing. Have the attitude of, I don't know what I don't know. Right? I have this thing where I don't know what I don't know.
The black hole.
The black hole, right? There's so many things I don't know that I didn't know. And at least you can get to the point where I know I didn't know, right?
You kind of shrink that black hole to a smaller size as much as you can.
As much as you can, right? And maybe, hopefully, I know lah. But if not, always have the attitude that's, I know, I don't know what I don't know. So much to explore around the world on everything. You can look at the grass and say, how many types of grass are there? You know what I mean? These are the things. Like, wow, I look at the hibiscus in Malaysia. It's like, how many types of hibiscus are there in Malaysia? Not one type. So that kind of spirit, that kind of growth mindset, right? That you don't know what you don't know. That's the growth mindset. Read the book, Carol Dweck.
So with that, Freda, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot today.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
I'm glad I've been of service. Thanks, Raja.
Okay.